Hello, this is Ben and another video, and we're staying with straight engines for the meantime. We talked about pump gas, maximum compression we can possibly or safely run with what's available, 91, 93 octane, and today we're going to be talking about strokers for the street. I recommend if you want to go fast, cubic inch is the answer for the street. No replacement for displacement is the byword for street performance. Whereas RPM is a racetrack, street hard to beat cubic inches. Now, I'll talk about the 408. It's pretty good, but I prefer a 4100. 408 is really a little over square engine where the bore size is a little bit bigger than the stroke. Not by much, 30 thousandths. Now, it becomes a slightly over square engine. But since we're talking straight, RPM is not the end-all be-all. Cubic inches is the way to go. And like I stated beforehand, I go with a 4100 stroke or a 4170 stroke for the street. Pretty impressive. And all else being equal, you'll have an advantage because of that longer leverage when you have a little bit of weight on the car, or even if it's a light Fox body or whatever. Cubic inches doesn't hurt at all. The engine isn't working as hard. The block may be as compared with the 302 base block, but 351's plenty stout. Now what you're looking at here is 440 cubic inches of stock 2-bolt main Windsor. You heard that right? 440. Now, how did I achieve that? Many years, a lot of people have always said, you cannot put a big arm on a Windsor. 4170 is max. It's 4250, and I'll show you how I did it. And it's rather simple. And a lot of naysayers, oh, can't be done. Well, have you tried it? No. Well, I did. It works. And I'll give you the details here. But a 440 cubic inches will definitely imagine if you have this 440 cubic inches on your old Bronco, first generation Bronco, or old school Stang, even a Fox body car, which is really what everybody's building today with whatever engines you choose. So when you stroke your LS or your small block Chevy, or this particular example here, Ford, boy, you're not gonna make a mistake. And it's very hard to over cylinder head this thing. 440 inches, and you put a 220 AFR head on there, no big deal. Okay, even with 11.5 to 1 street compression, it is no big deal. Now, if you're talking about 240 TFM, well, you better have some compression, some camshaft, but otherwise, it's very hard. You can get too small, actually, with this stroker small block. Now, just figure, 4250 arm. A big block Chevy's got a 4-inch arm. Okay, and the Chrysler's similar. 429 has a 359 stroke. The 383 has got a 335. FE blocks got 3.98. This got 4250, more than most big blocks are. In fact, I think any particular factory big block. And the worst part for all the competition, big block Chevy, Ford, they weigh 750 pounds at least. This is, I weighed them with the aluminum head, 440 inches, 450 pounds. You heard that right? 440 and 450 pounds. Might as well just say 450 combination. 450 pounds, 450 cubic inches, or 440. Okay? So, that is very hard to beat. You got several hundred pounds lighter, and the revving capability is just as good because the rods, the pistons are lighter. This is the diameter of the bore being so small, lend itself to more RPM. And think about the bottom end, right there, 3-inch main. It's like a big block main. It's not 2750, 3-inch. So just because you got a 3-inch main doesn't mean it's a step back. For this particular application on the street, you're not really having lots of RPM. 3-inch mains more than enough for strength. So when you look at the stroke, you go further out from 3.5, 3-inch to 4.5 or 4. This particular thing for 250, you still have the overlap between the rod throw and the main bearing diameter of the head. So you have this overlap, the strength. It's when it's got a small diameter main and then the rod goes out there. Ooh, it's thin right here. Okay, so you don't have that problem with this combination. Now, let me just warn people. When you stroke an engine, for example, 4.060, okay, with, where did I get my notes at? Oh, with a 4170 stroke, you have 431 inches. Okay, 460 over and 4170, which you can get a lot. That's 431 inches. Now, 4.145 times 4-inch stroke instead of 4170 is also 431 cubic inches. Those two have the same cubic inch displacement, but one reacts so much different than the other. The 460 over 4170, I ran that on my street car back in 1990. Okay, and I would come up to the line, brake torque it to about 1600, let off the gas, match the pedal, threw the muffler LA 850 Holly on it, weighed 3080, threw the muffler with 26 by 9-inch M&H Race Masters at Bakersfield. I'll go 1020, shifting 6800 RPM. Leave the line 13 to 1600, shift at 6800, just brake torque it, no trans brake, nothing fancy, and I'll go 1020. Wow. Okay, now when I change the combination to another 431, okay, but I took the 4170 arm in it and ended up with a 4-inch arm. Guess what happened? It didn't run as fast. It had a higher mile an hour because I didn't have the torque. Okay, but the doggone RPM went up. About the usable, I think I was shifting 68. Here I was shifting close under 8,000. Just say 7,800. Okay, it's like a RPM increase of 1,000. I had 14 gears with the old car. With the 431 with a shorter stroke, I needed 430. At least that. Okay, so 389, 410, it didn't matter with the big 4170 stroke, but with the 4-inch stroke, the same displacement of 431, I need at least 430 because it didn't have the low end grunt. Oh, and I had to loosen the converter as well. Okay, and so you don't get anything for free, like I always said. There's always a trade-off. Okay, and now let's go back to the 351. Oh, and also back in that day, I was running a, nobody had anything for a WINDSOR. Everybody kept saying Cleveland. When you say, oh, this is 1970, 1980, when you say, even 1990 really, it only changed right about mid-90s. When you build a WINDSOR, you go, you're wasting your time. Cleveland is it. Okay, so at that time, I was running a windage tray. Nobody sells a windage tray. What I did, I use a Boss 302 windage tray, then I re-drilled it outside because the 302 main is a little bit narrower here with a 7/16 main studs. I use big block Chevy main cap studs because I had the provision for the windage tray. Same diameter main studs on the WINDSOR. So I used the big block Chevy and fashioned my windage tray, and it worked. Had no issue. Reliability, all that comes into play. Now, one thing about strokers, here's a story. We tested a car at Harvey's Dyno in Whittier. Oh, this is 25 years ago. And I had a 427 that somebody bought, and I ran NA. So the guy at the last moment said, Ben, I'm going to build a turbo. I go, that's a 4-inch stroke. Oh, people said it's okay. But I go, well, it's okay, but I prefer not to run that. And the owner, who's from San Bernardino, said, let's do it anyway. So I changed the compression and put a turbo cam, being at 427 inches, 125 bore, and a 4-inch stroke. At Harvey's dyno, at about 16 pounds of boost, 17 pounds of boost, we made 1,600 rear wheel horsepower. This is pretty good back in the day. Okay, that's 25 years ago. Gosh, I feel old. But anyway, 15 pounds of boost. 16 pounds of boost, roughly a little tad down below 17 pounds of boost, and it made 1,600 horsepower. It weighed 3,550. We went to Vegas, the car went 816. Not bad. Okay, that's with a 10.5 tire, heavy as it is, still maintaining 17 pounds of boost. There you go. That's a 7-second ride. Okay, if it went 816 in Vegas on a summer day. Now, I told the guy, look, you're spinning from mid-track, you start spinning the tires all the way to the end. So it's skating around. I said, what do you want us to do? I said, well, like I told you, this was never meant. I really believe that you don't need to stroke big on a turbo engine. You do, NA, or maybe nitrous oxide. But anyway, so he relented. I distroked it from 4-inch stroke to 3.5. Now it's 380 cubic inches. Okay, not that big. And guess what happened? Went back to Harvey's dyno from 427, 125 by 4-inch stroke to 125 by 3.5-inch stroke. Now I got a much longer rod. And the doggone thing at Harvey's dyno made the same exact 1,600 real horsepower, the same boost. And Harvey looked at me, wow, it didn't cost anything. Well, I go, that doesn't surprise you. You've seen enough of these things. And he nodded. It didn't cost us any more power, but the peak numbers went up about 1,000 RPM, just like you would NA when you did stroke. Boost follows us, or something with boost or supercharge, pretty much mimics the same RPM range, peak and all that. It'll also show the increase or decrease, whichever way you went. Now, that being said, went back to the track, it needed a looser converter. And eventually, the doggone thing ran 7 seconds. No issue whatsoever. Anyway, that's a good lesson to learn, that I see a lot of people stroke their big block Chevys or Ford and turbochargers and I go, wow. Come to think of it, you could stroke, I won't suggest a large stroke, with that combination, probably 375, no more. Remember, stroke is displacement, boost is also displacement. Just think about this. A 302 that's at maximum RPM or torque is displacing 302 inches, of course. Okay, it's filling the cylinders. Maybe a little bit more if you got ram supercharging, so forth and so on. But let's just take that number. 302 means it displaces 302 inches of air by volume into those cylinders. But once you boost it 1 atmosphere, that 300 inches is now 600 inches. Surprising, isn't it? So that if you're boosting at 302, triple atmosphere, 369, 900 cubic inches. And go figure, with the RPM that you have at that cubic inches, or static cubic inch, you got a lot of capability, you got a lot of RPM. Now, when you stroke an engine, then you boost it, your capable or RPM capability drops significantly, just like you would normally aspirated. Okay, and that being said, now you wonder why at that time we were racing Gin Deputy, Kenny Dotweiler, myself, racing Jason, Storm and Norman racing the Grand Nationals back then. You wonder, we have 302 inches, 347 for many of us. I'd run at 331. Those doggone Grand Nationals were giving us a good run for the money. And they're 231 CID as opposed to 347. And they got 2 less cylinders. Does that tell you something about boost, giving displacement? So even though we did boost our displacement to a higher number, our RPM suffered. Same thing with today. That hasn't changed very much. So I would suggest get a little bit conservative in your stroke consideration. Don't get too big, because you want the RPM to build on your supercharger or turbocharger and get your RPM potential. I mean, these guys with big cubic engines, suddenly they get up on the RPM, it kind of like lays down. Oh yeah, it's great, especially from low end to whatever. But you know what? When you have a small tire, you only have 8.5 or 10.5, and you have big displacement on a supercharger, you're only hurting yourself, man. I believe that the displacement you can control in order for you to hook up, even with all these advanced electronics. But then when you get going, and then your RPM potential is still there. You're not gonna get it when you get a 600 cubic inch big block Chevy on boost. It's not gonna happen. But anyway, so here we are. Let me see. Let me move the cameras, because I'm my own producer, director, cameraman. I'm the monkey in front of the lens. I'm gonna move this thing and show you guys what the difference are. Because 4250, a lot of people will not believe that I have a 4250 stroke crank in here. And let me just prove that otherwise and show you guys what is in here. Now, let me get the camera, excuse me. We are Mr. Low Dollar here. Okay, what we have is this ruler here. Okay, let me see. 4 inches. Where's my 4 inches at? I can't even see it myself. 4. There you go, 4 inches. Oop. There you go, 4 inches. Stick it right there. A little over 4. 4250. Okay? To the bottom, 4250 right there. Now, that being said, that's at bottom dead center. Now, let me loop this around here. Let me get missed. Okay. Now, here is the business end of this stroker. Watch me turn this rod thing. There's a rod bolt. There's the cut that I did, the cut on the cylinder wall. And look how it clears. Okay? Clears big time. Same thing with the shoulder there. And over here, excuse the oxidation on this block. Has been sitting a long time. Now look at the rod bolt again. It clears. Okay? So again, beautiful. Now, what we have here is you saw how it cleared. All right? Okay. Now, that's a 4250 stroke. They said it can't be done. You guys saw it already. Now, here is the piston. If you look at, it's 6250 long rod, and I had Ross make me a 43 top ring and second ring, and a very narrow oil control ring. I have no need with this much stroke for rail support for the oil control ring. Not needed, okay? Because you're gonna hear people say, oh, with that much stroke, the pin is gonna be into the oil ring land, and you're gonna run those spacers and you're gonna have oil consumption. Not true. You see it right here. 4-250 stroke, 6-250 long rod, and no spacer. Now, look at here, the business end. I've asked Ross which they, made for me to mimic the twisted wedge combustion chamber. Like I said to you before in the previous video, I want this to be present on my engine so that combustion chamber is relevant to the process and to how it works. Gotta have that. All right. The other ones will be circular. Then you lost your combustion chamber. People don't realize that. On a previous video, I said you will lose your combustion chamber if you have a dish piston. You have to retain that. This pad, that pad mimics the combustion chamber of a twisted wedge TFS. Same thing here. So that is the twisted wedge combustion chamber. 11.5 to 1, and I asked for that. Custom made from them. Okay, so fairly light. Actually, compared to a big block, this is very light. Okay, so with this kind of combination, 2-100. Now, if you want to get fancy, you can put a 2-inch rod journal in this thing. And I haven't tried it, I'll be frank with you, but I think you can force for 300 with a 283 journal in there. Okay, but I think 4250 is good enough. Now you're really under square big time with a 42. Okay, before I forget, I've ran our old combination, roughly 405, 401 cubic inch, small block Ford 9.2 deck with a 3750 stroke, very fast, okay? But I've also ran a couple other times a 4250 stroke on a hard running combination. Now, what is telling is the big cubic inch WINDSOR 9.5 deck compared to the 9.23 750 stroke. The 4250 stroke left the line much harder. The 8 starts to fade because the RPM potential isn't there anymore, right? It's got a lot of internal drag, reciprocating drag, and the piston speed is just too much. When you have a lot of stroke, the piston stays at TDC and then accelerates, whereas a short stroke is like a continuous motion. It's a little slower, but you're not parking and then accelerating from TDC. You want the continuous motion, and that is your RPM potential. It's able to take it easy, especially with a short rod. A short stroke with a long rod combination. That even makes it so much easier for the engine. Now, going back to the 4250 stroker 9.5 deck, it didn't go much faster. No. And the race was the 8th mile. Okay. It produced some good ET, but if you look at the lighter weight that it had, I wasn't impressed. But then again, maybe somebody else could do a better job than what I have done or what we have done or what we have achieved. There's always an exception out there, and somebody will break the norm. In racing, don't be surprised, it happens. But from my experience, what I'm able to see is the 3750 stroke with a long rod did, I should say, equal the big cubic inch. All right, granted that the bigger engine was on a lighter weight and a bigger induction system and all that, whereas the small cubic inches was more basic, 4150 base as opposed to the Dominator on the big motor. So there is a limit to stroking. You're gonna pay for it somewhere down the line. I bet you if it was a quarter mile, the short stroke would probably run away from it. But since it's only 8th mile, the displacement was great. It left the line hard, plus it's got a lighter weight. But all else being equal, I bet you probably won't even see a shadow of a gap between those two. But in the quarter mile, I know that the short stroke will rev and just take off and probably gap the big motor. Anyway, that's all, and please subscribe to my channel so we can keep this going, and I'll give you more straightforward, should we say, simplified version of explaining things. I'm not going to give anybody some kind of math on my blackboard and give you all this, oh, you know, this is that, pi squared and stuff, and this is how come you got displacement. I keep it simple. Bore, okay, and stroke is the displacement. Bore, 3 inches. You add, you know, 430 over, that's 6 inches, and you add 2 or 3 inches, 2 3 points to that, and that's your cubic inches. Okay, so I just want to keep it simple so that a lot of you guys can follow. Not everybody's a rocket scientist. I'm not either, and hopefully we keep this going. So please subscribe to Ben Alameda on YouTube, and off to the next one. Oh, we're going to talk about combustion chambers. I think I'm looking at that BMW there, and then I have a Skyline cylinder head, then I have a 280Z. Wow. And I'll show you guys the difference between those. It's not all winners for those cross-flow head. The 280Z might be antiquated, but it's got some crazy advantages, and don't be surprised if it pulls you out of the corner. Okay, but anyway, till the next time, guys, please subscribe, and see you again. Thank you very much.